for applications for funding into different categories.
That's obviously super interesting by itself.
Definitely, yeah. But then,
but for any kind of application, or was it for specifically governments, or was it for some type of funding, or?
It was for a specific call for funding for startups.
Okay.
So the problem there, Vinnova has many different kinds of calls, yes. Like big or small, or like really with a lot of money, or like kind of a smaller budget. But then for startups, the budget is normally smaller and get way more applications. Yeah, order of like 1,000.
And most are crap, I guess, or really bad. Most applications are really bad, I guess, as well. Or?
Yeah, that too. But you still have to go through them all. And so this classification prototype was just to kind of just make the first classification to sort them, so you don't have to go through them manually and say like, oh, this is about life science, this goes to this administrator, this goes to...
Was it more categorization in the beginning? Or
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That sounds obviously perfect.
Yeah.
So for a single call, you could say that these are about rather life science than startup,
right?
AI
enabling technologies, or I can't actually remember the
how many categories did you have?
There's 5.
5.
And I actually don't remember them right now. This is so I said it was a prototype. It's actually a deployed solution. So we don't touch this very much. Yeah. It's there and it works.
Can you share any details about the model, or the data, or what type of model it is, or how much can you share about that?
Well, for this one, since I haven't really worked hands-on with it. I took over another project that I'm more comfortable talking about, but this one is like a supervised, like a neural net with these like 5 different classes, and then so we had this training data that was like
look at the application text itself, or more metadata around it?
It's a small, like a snippet of text, like projektsammanfattning.
Yes, the summary basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the project summary, and that was enough to get a pretty good classification or into these different categories.
Yeah, awesome. Did you know anything about the accuracy? How well did it work? Or did you have some metrics around that?
I don't have it. I think I noticed because I came from academia, and I was a bit surprised that the accuracy was like a bit low according to my former standards. But I've understood that 0.8.
Yeah. Awesome. And we started speaking about you're obviously pregnant now as well, and you need to start thinking about handover as well.
Yeah.
And then you're potentially also recruiting soon. So people that are interested in using AI to, how would you describe it? What are Vinnova using AI for in your case?
Okay, now I have to sell this. Exactly. I want to get good candidates here. Like we can, basically the potential is like endless. There's a lot of things we can do, and we're kind of forming our own position. So we had this one solution, and that works well for like one particular call, and that's fine. But we want to see it like implemented everywhere, and actually be like augment our data that we have to help the program managers like make better decisions. So we have kind of formed this position ourselves. I've wanted to do AI like when I started, so I went into that direction. But there's obviously a lot of other things we have to think about.
But the main focus is really try to help the decision maker, so to speak, if they should get funding or not.
Exactly.
In some way.
Yeah.
And then it could be for categorizing the applications, or for sorting them in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Like help with like filtering. Like if you want to get some of the applications that are about like life science, you want to easily get them. So you can augment your data with that type of from topic modeling.
And the vision now that you're building up, of course, now in the end, this is about the data, it's about the stack, it's the engineering pieces, it's the model pieces. So the vision sort of expands into, I guess, over time, several roles to realize that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we started with just the 2 of us, and we are hoping to recruit someone who will take over while I'm gone.
That would potentially stay on and increase the team.
We would have to talk to my boss about that. I'm not sure. So I'll be gone for a couple of months, and that would be a good way to introduce a new someone else.
And do you have a specific profile that you think is the ideal profile for when you're gone? That you're looking for?
Someone who likes TensorFlow. I didn't have any experience with natural language processing when I started, so I don't think. That's obviously preferred, but I think if someone can just have some experience with AI, I think that's fine. So maybe someone straight out of like university, KTH, something like that. I'm not sure. I probably should have checked this with my boss before we started talking about this. But yeah, we are looking for someone, or maybe two.
But you're also, then of course going on, maternity leave in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And you need to do handover to someone, and hopefully the new person will be coming in soon as well. How do you do the handover? Are you going to can you leave it over to the other person, or can you document more? Can you prepare in some way to not take on big project going forward? How do you plan ahead now, coming months, when you know you're going on leave shortly?
Well, I try to make sure the ducks are in order. I want to make sure that the code I'll be working on works, is robust, and is well documented. Right. I guess we'll get into that, but in my previous workplace, handover was like a common thing. You'd always take over someone's code, or and you want to make sure they don't email you in the day saying this broke, or this doesn't compile or anything. So,
but this handover topic, it is quite important to.
And it happens everywhere.
Every time, everywhere, and it's sometimes now you have a specific situation with maternity leave, but the way you contain, the way you package your work or your code, or in order for someone else to pick it up, is quite easy said, but there are better and worse ways, I guess.
Well, I think so. The particular thing I'm working on right now is deploying this one application that I worked on.
Ooh, that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, and I think so deploying is actually giving that recipe. This is how you run the code. So, of course, you can write down first you start by creating this environment, and then you execute these scripts, and then you get all these files, and then you combine those. But if you actually written a pipeline, that's how you do it. Yeah. So I hope that will be enough of a reference in one way. But then, of course,
Do you run on premise, by the way, or on some public cloud? On premise.
Yeah.
Because of security reasons, or just?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is also one of the topics when we started. We were like, what can we do? What can't we do? This hasn't been done before, really. We had this one solution that was actually trained in Azure. But then I think we kind of early on noticed that we kind of wanted our own infrastructure.
I think that's an important topic we should have later.
Definitely.
Speaking about government agencies in general, and having infrastructure that they can, should everyone develop their own, or can we share something?
And it's a great topic, because it's also a huge debate, and it's also, I argue, in many governmental agencies, people are scared what they can do and not do. Yeah. So here we have a governmental agency, Vinnova, who is actually doing something, and we had the Kungliga Biblioteket here last time. So to do awesome AI stuff in government is completely doable, but you kind of need to know what you're doing and have the right people with you. But to hear those sort of to get into those topics and tips and tricks, and what have you learned, or how did you think, what were the hurdles, and how did you overcome them? Yeah. And then, because I don't think it needs to be that scary. It's more of a know-how. It's a know-how
I think
topic.
The scary thing for me is that, AI is such a general purpose technology. It can be used for anything. And so many things about, how to develop a system is very, very common. The model itself may be different, the data may be different, but the infrastructure usually is very similar.
Yeah.
But everyone is doing it by themselves anyway. And they're not reusing anything. They're building stuff from scratch. And, the more we could help each other, I think it would be a huge improvement.
And I think this is a big topic because it's back to this whole picture. How much is very unique, or what do you really need to do, maybe on-prem or all this? Because I argue that if you have a robust understanding of architecture in your tech stack, you can understand what is the common denominators that we really can share, or where we could do it once, or and where do we need to be unique. And instead of I give the example, and when I was at Vattenfall, we had nuclear. This is national security class information, right? Yeah. And someone argued, we need to build everything in our whole tech stack according to that standard. And, interesting. You want to run Azure as a terminal server? It's a joke, right?
Yeah.
So how can we do 80-20, what works for most? And then how can we work with the niche cases? And we can be very, on-prem and sophisticated for these niche cases, and then understand how to use it. And it's fairly common sense, but it seems like this is this huge pendulum, right? So security alert, and then everything should go according to the most risky case, and that becomes very, very complicated and costly. So good topic.
Yes, definitely.
I actually added as a topic as well to just speak about the next steps and the general thinking about using AI in general in Vinnova. But then it would be fun to speak more generally, even so, to speak about data and AI can be used in government agencies in general.
Yeah.
But to speak specifically about Vinnova, perhaps of course, for if you should get funding or not is an obvious question. But I guess it could be more topics as well, or other ways to use data and AI in Vinnova. So if you have any thoughts about that, we can talk more about that later.
Absolutely.
But with that, I would like to welcome you here, Leonora Vesterbacka. Very nice to have you here. You are speaking about a topic, or are working with a question, I think, that is very dear to my heart and very important, I think, for Sweden in general, which is to make government agencies more data-driven and AI-assisted, I think you call it, right?
Yeah.
Something that I think a lot of our governments needs to be better at, or can certainly improve to a large extent. So whatever we can do to help with that, I think is something truly important. So very welcome.
I agree. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. But let's start a bit more about you. Who is Leonora? How would you describe your background?
Right. I'm 32 years old, about to go on maternity leave. I have a PhD in physics.
Yeah.
I worked at CERN, so a lot of people probably heard about this particle physics
We need to talk about the data stack.
Right, we can. So I have a physics background.
Yeah. And before that, you did the PhD, and I think we should mention the PhD and speak more about that. Me, and I know Henrik as well, is very interested in the Large Hadron Collider in CERN and whatnot. And we had, I think, a number of other people that also worked with that on the podcast before.
We had someone on the podcast, and then I mentioned Lotte, a dear friend in Grundfos, who was at CERN for 10 years.
Right.
And I had the chance to, talk about the crazy latency and the crazy sizes of data.
I know.
but your PhD, what was that? What was your PhD all about?
Oh, I have to see if I remember the title of it.
But even before that, what did you do before the PhD, by the way?
So I studied physics in Lund.
In Lund.
Not at technical university. I kind of early on was interested in CERN, and I wanted to go work there, like from high school.
What attracted you to CERN? Why do you thought that was interesting?
The scale of the things, everything. There's so many cool things about it. And
what is CERN, by the way?
CERN stands for the Centre Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire. Yeah. So it's the European Nuclear Research Center. It's with
a huge funding, right? How many billion of euros can it be?
Oh God! So the funding is in Swiss franc, and actually don't have a number, but
how many
a lot.
people approximately is working there, you would say?
So on site, including the technical staff and everything, it must be more than 10,000. But then it's a distributed workplace, so people work from universities all over the world.
But you used to give people a feeling of about the camp, the site. CERN is, how is it located? How does it look like? Because I think it's an amazing place altogether.
Have you been?
No, I wish I were, but I've seen all these pictures and everybody keeps telling me, and I've heard the stories. We can hear it one more time.
Right, sure. Well, so first of all, it's located outside of Geneva in Switzerland. So a lot of people think about it's a big ring, but that's actually the Large Hadron Collider. So it's hosted at CERN. So CERN does a lot of different particle physics and nuclear research.
It's a campus. Could you call it that?
It's a lab.
Yeah.
So the main site has a bank, post office, daycare, restaurant, hotel, offices. And so a lot of people go there to work, just sit in their offices. But of course, we have the computing infrastructure, the CERN data center, because we can get to that too. A huge amount of data to process. But then I think, a lot of people have heard about this, the Large Hadron Collider. So this is
and what is?
That's
what is a hadron collider?
A hadron collider is so it's a particle accelerator that accelerates protons to almost the speed of light, and you do that by in a ring that is located under 100 meters on the ground, and the ring has a circumference of 27 kilometers.
It's a big ring.
Exactly. So you also have cars. So if you have to go to the other side of the ring, you can't just walk over. You have to drive there. So you have these really shitty old Peugeot cars that you rent and you drive
100 meters or you drive on the surface? No,
drive on the surface and then go down with the elevator. So I used to do that a lot, actually. Go down there because I was partly working a bit on detector, but also as a tour guide, because a lot of people want to go there and see it. But yeah, so then the point is that you accelerate protons to the speed, almost the speed of light, and then collide them at 4 different collision points. And around these collision points, you have particle detectors that then detect what happened in the collision, and then you read out that data and analyze it.
And it's not a small amount of data, is it?
Right.
Can you give some numbers? How much data do these kind of accelerators generate?
Well, so yeah, this is actually interesting because I think people know that there are collisions happening, but at what scale?
Yeah.
It's is it once a year? Is it once a month?
Yeah.
It's actually 40 million times a second.
So the collisions
happens
40 million times a second. This was a new metric for me.
I know. It's insane. Sometimes I double check. I'm 40 megahertz. Yeah, that's it. That's
because I saw it. Okay, now we load it up. One crash in an hour. No, 40 million in a second.
But the problem is first of all, not all collisions result in something interesting physically. So that's why you have so many of them. And then there's a huge orchestra that have to be aligned to make sure that everything is working properly. So if you have some part of the detector that is off for some reason, or because these aren't IKEA bought stuff that you these are very handmade special devices that are huge and super expensive. And of course they some things might break. So you want to run the collisions as much as possible, because what normally happens is that after an hour or something, oh, we have a problem here, we have to shut it down, so you have to stop it a lot. But then so the actual running of the detector is done. I can't remember exactly the details about this, but it's not you have big runs that are over years, and those are naturally divided into different sections that are then split up if there's something happening. So we have to shut something down and then fix it, and then you start again. So it's not like 40 million times per second for a year. It's more like 40 million times per second for an hour, and then you fix something, and then there's the whole thing with the magnets, because magnets are like really strong magnetic fields, and it takes like hours to turn them on and off in a secure way. So you don't want to be like bringing those down unnecessarily. So there's a lot of, it sounds like there's a lot of like collisions happening, but in reality, it's not that much.
But the detectors then, they don't measure everything, but they in some way, or can you speak a bit physically how they work? What kind of detection can they really do? Because they're not really part of the collision, right? It's like on the side in some way.
Right. So, excuse me. Well, the detectors are like layers. So there's so the full detector. So there's, excuse me.
No worries.
There are 4 like big particle accelerator or detectors. Atlas, CMS, ALICE, and LHCb.
So if I imagine the ring, they're spaced out.
Exactly. Kind of evenly and not perfectly. So the 2 that I've worked on, Atlas and CMS, they are both like cylindrical in shape. And one of them is like as big as like a 3-story building. The other one, the compact muon solenoid, is a bit smaller. And those are like, people normally say like a cylindrical onion. So we have layers, but it's in a cylindrical shape. So you have the beam pipe going through in the middle. And then what happens is that you have like your collision, your protons interacting. And as you know, like when you have like...
Of course we know.
Of course you know physics. Masses at high energy. So energy is the same as mass according to Einstein, E equals mc squared.
Yes.
So if you like pump in a lot of energy, like accelerate them to the speed of light, you can actually create new particles. So that's the whole principle. So
is it just protons, or is it different type of particles that collide?
Protons.
Only protons.
Yeah, there are other accelerators that collide, like, or have been colliding different things. The Hadron Collider is for protons, and then also lead ions.
Yeah.
So
and what kind of particles are being created then? I guess I know. Yeah, but use
right. So you like crunch in all this energy, and then you create new particles. So you can have like there's a like standard zoo of particles that you can create. Like you can get electrons, muons. So a muon is a kind of a heavier cousin to the electron. A lot of people know about the electron. Photons, like light, you create those. And then you can get various sorts of other hadrons, which is particles that are made up of quarks and gluons in different formations.
Perhaps we should have like a 101 on physics here and the standard model in itself. If you were to speak about the particles that are included in the standard model, how would you describe it?
Right, there are different ways you can kind of structure it, but you have on the one hand you have leptons. So to the lepton family, you have the electrons and the muons and the tau leptons. Those are like they have electric charge. They interact via something called the weak interaction, and then you have the particles that interact through the strong force, and those are the quarks and gluons. And these can, in different variations, be created according, there are many outcomes of a collision according to actually how the proton themselves are made up of quarks and gluons, and depending on actually what of those constituents interact in the collision, you get different results. So that's why you need to have so many, because you can get so many.
You can't steer them exactly how they will do, but
exactly.
If you do enough of them, you will have a statistical.
Exactly. So, for example, if you collide electrons and positrons, which is also another type of collider, you can have, then you can more. Those are only like two constituents, so then you can more precisely. The energy going in and out. But then when it comes to like when you have all these different, so each of the constituents carry a bit of the momentum, but not all of it. So you get a distribution of
results.
Yeah, exactly. So then the point is that you get all these different particles, and the different layers of the detectors are formed to like catch the different types of particles.
Right.
And yeah, we can go into more detail.
Did you mention the boson as well, or?
Right, no, I didn't.
Yeah. What's a boson then?
So they are like forget how I have to go back to my thesis. No, of course I know this, but those are kind of force carriers. So what is interacting between the different quarks and leptons, and then most notably is probably the Higgs boson.
Yes, I was alluding to that for some reason.
Exactly.
And what is the specific with the Higgs boson?
Well, Anders, what do you know?
A good one. I like it. Put him on the spot.
God's particle, right? Or
right. Yeah.
How would you describe it? Or I mean, it was a big thing. How many years ago was it when it was discovered, so to speak?
This year, 10 years.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, that was a really big moment, right, in physics?
Yeah, because.
Were you working then, or no?
No, that was before my time.
Before your time.
Yeah. So all the other particles I mentioned, like there's hadn't been like they've all been like established and measured and discovered, but there's this one missing piece. That was the Higgs boson. That was already like theorized in I think 1963.
There's something missing here. There should be another particle here, but we haven't found it yet.
Exactly.
Or seen it yet.
Exactly. Depends on how you, what you think you're measuring, looking at it. But so it was really like that was the main highlight of the Large Hadron Collider. Like the fact that they, at that energy they built it for, they found it. I think they knew kind of where they were looking, and that's a really exciting result.
But I find that rhetoric. They knew where they were looking. How are they looking? How are they at a certain speed, at a certain mix of constituents that they are pushing together?
Well, theoretically, like it would be good if it like had existed at that energy or like mass that it had. Mm-hmm. But the previous accelerators were not able to create that mass. So they like theoretically they kind of knew that like this.
If we can build a hadron collider that can take us to this speed, i.e. this mass, we should see it. We should detect it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I mean, it was really a big moment for sure, right? I'm very much a newbie in this, but even I remember that time. So
and for a layman, why are we doing this?
Good, because it's really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah. You know what? That's enough for me, actually. But this is, in my understanding, fundamental research to understand how the universe and how everything works.
Exactly.
So this is like the lowest level, almost, right, of understanding the mechanics, physics of universe.
Yeah. Exactly. No, and like I can tell you everything in this room we're sitting in, like we know what it's made up of. And I couldn't have said that with like the certainty if we didn't know what protons like or quarks or gluons and the forces interacting between them was. But everything is made up of those. And even the cosmic the things you can find in space that is more exotic that we don't have here on Earth. Like we know that too. There are many things we don't know, but I think it's pretty like fundamental to like know what you're dealing with.
And couldn't one argue that in order to innovate or take the next quantum leap in how we manage energy or how we basically build stuff or do things, somewhere you need to understand the core, in order to do the real first principles, re-understanding how we can build stuff differently, you need to go down to the smallest dimensions in order to then, imagine something else. So I would argue it's part of, on a grander scale, to be smarter and build things in new ways.
Yeah, and exactly. And we don't know what the results that we're going to be getting in the next 10 years will show us. like there could really be anything. But I don't think there's a reason to like stop doing fundamental research just because we know this now. There's so many things we don't know. Like, for example, the topic of my PhD thesis was on the stuff we don't know.
What was it? What was the topic?
Yeah,
again, do you have the title?
I can look it up very quickly, for sure.
Kidding. It's a search for new physics with two opposite sign, same flavor leptons. I remember like right before I was publishing it, it was like, oh, we should change that to like same sign, no opposite sign. Like it was very like the actual wording changed.
The nuances of the actual title was something that
exactly. So that's why I don't know it.
Can we just break out a few parts of that? So
sure.
Supersymmetry, what is that?
So yeah, we said that like we know everything in this room, but then there's also things we don't know. For example, what dark matter is. So dark matter, for example, is something that is like.
As your
perfect.
PhD thesis.
Search for supersymmetry in opposite sign, same flavor leptons, final states with the CMS detector. There we go. Well, first of all, I'm here.
We're
listening.
You know, he's on television.
Now we're trying to understand the word. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Take that down now.
Supersymmetry. What does that mean?
Well, I want to start in another end. So, for example, we're not satisfied with this like standard model particle physics because it can't explain what dark matter is, for example. And what is dark matter, you ask me then? So it's something it's dark. It's observed in the sense that it's very massive, like dark matter. It's massive. So it's something that like interacts with things in space, and it doesn't emit any like known radiation. So no light is coming out of it, and so people have been saying like maybe this is a new type of particle that we just don't know about, but that wouldn't really fit into the standard model, the like particles that I was telling you about before. So that would mean that like, okay, we have to kind of fit this new particle in, and it should have the feature of being relatively massive and stable because it's not decaying anywhere. It's kind of just like a big like dark blob in space. Yeah. And it doesn't emit light, for example. So those are the kind of criteria you're looking for. And then you're like, okay, well, we have this great tool. Like, let's see if we can find it using the Hadron Collider. So one of the theories that would like kind of add new particles to the standard model is supersymmetry. So I said we have those like electrons and the quarks. So to all of those, you'd have a supersymmetric partner. And the naming convention is really nice. You add an S in front. So to the electron has a supersymmetric partner called the selectron. I worked on like electrons and muons, and they are collectively called smuons. No, sleptons. So actually one of the last papers I published was like a search for slepton production.
That's so funny.
I know. And I just, that's another thing I love about CERN. Like
the naming is awesome.
Yeah.
But how does it relate to antiparticles then? Or like anti-proton or something? What's the relationship between those?
So that's another way you can, so the antiparticle of an electron is a positron, and those are like fairly established.
Yes.
Then there's antimatter is another thing that you can produce at CERN.
Yeah.
But that's more when you like get these different, kind of try to make up a proton or any kind of mass using the anti versions of each of the quarks. So each quark has like a plus and minus version, you know.
Okay.
So it sounds kind of similar, but that's another like fairly established field. Yeah, this is kind of on top of those like symmetries, adding another symmetry, like hence the word supersymmetry.
Yeah.
So the whole point is that like this theory would like predict a new type of particle that has these features. And according to some of the theories, we would be like if it existed, we would be able to see them. The problem is it's really difficult because I said they're massive and they don't interact, which means that they will actually just not get caught in the detector. They will just be produced and go out through to space or somewhere. And that's the point, like, of my thesis, to like analyze data and see, like, did we just get the particles we expected according to the standard model, or did we see some of these like particles that actually escaped? Because then you get into the field of like conservation of momentum. So like if you have everything needs to add up, you know. So you can kind of see if there's like some of the.
So you're looking
energy.
for the gaps in. I mean, like this should all add up.
Exactly.
The equation should add up. Everything should add up. But there is something missing here.
Exactly.
That's a little bit the proof.
Yeah, exactly. So
the whole is the proof.
Yeah. So the thing you're looking for is actually called like missing transverse momentum. Just because like that's what it is. Like you have like. You know what momentum you're like putting into the collision, and then you measure all the other things coming out, and then you have in some direction like a missing part. So that sounds relatively easy, but then you can also like this missing part can be created by so many other things. For example, like other known particles called neutrinos, or a detector, like if there's something that's like wrongly calibrated.
I mean, like this could also be a calibration problem.
Exactly. Yeah, I actually worked on that too, and it's really like you have to. So it's not just looking for those gaps. It's a simplified way of looking at it, but like looking for those gaps and then taking away the effects of the potential like neutrinos and the detector effects, and then if you see something that's missing, that could be a supersymmetric particle.
I mean, it has a lot of connections, I think, to deep learning or machine learning in general as well, that, you know, you have to try to get away of noise that you may have in the data that is causing, you know, potentially some problems with the model or some bias that you have. And by normalizing away all these things, it sounds like you're more or less normalizing away neutrinos and calibration errors. And then if you do that, then properly you can show something exists, correct?
Yeah, kind of, yes. There's more that goes into it too, and also like you're not just looking for what you're missing, but also what is the other particles that are produced. But of course, like there's machine learning in every part of these analyses, from like the anomaly detection when you like see if the detector is functioning, to like the data acquisition, the triggering in the hardware, and then of course just like the reconstruction of the particles, because I told you like the detector like is catching all the different particles, but it's not. It's just like recording hits in like some layers and energy deposits in some calorimetric crystals. You have to combine them in a smart way to say like, oh, that looks like an electron because they had that curvature and this energy. So there's many things you can use machine learning to like.
I feel like we can get stuck in this problem of physics, you know, for an hour more, but I really want to keep a bit longer if it's okay.
I think this whole CERN, it's such a tease as inspiration, teasing the brain. It's tantalizing. What's the word? Like it's so. I think it's super exciting. I just want to understand a little bit more. Okay, now we've talked about what physically happens. What's the data perspective of what you just said? You know, what is the data in this, and how the hell do you capture that, and what sizes are we talking about? What how do you take this? What you said, the sensors are measuring something that turns into curves. This is massive data that's sort of in very short term time, 40 million times per second.
Exactly. And if you were to record like all of those, they would create, I think I saw some number being like 1 petabyte, like for each of those collisions. And obviously that is not feasible to like.
So you mean 1 petabyte per times 40 hertz.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not feasible.
So 1
really
petabyte for every of those 40 million hits per second.
Yes.
That's a good number.
Isn't it what they say? Like,
or maybe it's like per second. It's 1 petabyte. It's something like that. But still, it's enormous. So obviously you can't record everything. So, and I told you not every collision is resulting in something that is like physically interesting. So what you have is like a triggering system that is deciding. So it's like a hardware trigger that just kind of like adds up quickly, like some of these like components. Like if you have like a big energy deposit in one of these different calorimeters, or if you have tracks, like you can kind of quickly calculate like, okay, that sums up to like this threshold energy, save this, and if it's under something, like just discard it.
So basically it sits there and it's all like a threshold. Then you take the snapshot. You take the data snap for a period of time.
Yeah.
When things hardware-wise is triggering, put on the camera, put on the data camera.
No, then you save them.
Okay, you save it.
Yeah, you save it. So otherwise
it's a stream, and then now you save it.
Exactly. So then you save it if it's above some threshold, and then there's many like ways like maybe you like. That decision you made wasn't good enough. So when I left 3 years ago, no, a year and a half ago, there's talk of doing machine learning on the like hardware. So
on the edge, ML, so to speak. On
FPGAs. So just to like better decisions made.
So what are you talking about? Having FP, that's sensor levels, GPUs,
device that
GPUs on the edge, or what are we talking about?
GPUs, but it's not really GPUs, but it's some device that can implement some ML model that you can use to make more informed decision rather than just frequency count or energy measurements. Yeah. You can have some kind of more pattern that you are looking for.
So
but now we're talking about hardware.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we shouldn't get it. This is a question I'm not very comfortable with, but I remember before I left, I was like, this sounds really cool. And if I had stayed, I probably would have want to work on it. But I did.
But what happens afterwards? You do some data collection of some part of the data at least, and then you need to, I guess, find the needle in the haystack in some way there.
Exactly.
How do you go about doing that?
Well, then you have another triggering step that like takes down the rate a bit further. And then the final things that you save is, I don't have maybe it's a kilobyte per collection, something.
So going from a petabyte down to a kilobyte or something.
Yeah.
Like a million times at least smaller or something.
Yeah, oh my God.
More.
I hope no one's going to correct me on this. I mean, just to the numbers doesn't matter. It's like, you obviously can't save it. Yeah, exactly. You can't save everything. And then you make decisions and you save what you think is good. And then the like big problem with like reconstructing the actual like particle trajectory appears, because then you go from having all these, like the saved data you have is like in forms of hits in these different detector layers or energy deposits, and then you combine them, and then there are various ways you can do it, and then try to make sure that like all the tracks add up with like, okay, this seems to be an electron because it had first a track here and then a curvature here and then energy deposit.
So the profile of how it moved tells you somewhere this is probably an electron pattern.
Yeah, exactly, because there's also magnets around these, and you know what happens to charged particles in a magnetic field? That they bend.
Yeah, they bend.
Yeah. I just want to see if you're following.
It's good that you're testing here.
Exactly. But yeah, so then you have these like reconstruction algorithms where you like kind of like you go from all this like detector information to like electron 1, which has momentum of this much and mass this much and the angle this much. And
what kind of tooling are you using then? Are you using notebooks, MATLAB, or what are you?
No, these are like really monolithic, like C++, like reconstruction code that has been around for a while, and like, yeah, it's no, it's not notebooks. Like, and a lot of these like reconstruction steps, like I as the analyzer will not see that. Like a lot of it is just done for all of the like physicists at CERN or on that particular experiment, and then you can have your own kind of. If you know you're looking for something, like I was looking for supersymmetry, you might want to have like a fancier algorithm to like calculate this like missing transverse momentum. Then you can implement that on top. But those are then this like the data is presented in like a CERN specific format called like root trees. So we have the old framework called not old. It's like very very good and it's been around for a while. But it has a tree structure, and what more is it to say about it? Well, there's this whole like framework around it called root, and when I started, I was like mainly just programming in C++, but over the years,
on a big like mainframe in some way that they have there. Or
sorry,
do you have a big mainframe that you run the C++ code
exactly?
in?
Yeah, exactly. And then analyzers get like their own like chunk of this data format that they can analyze the way they want for their analysis.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Wasn't it hard though? I mean, doing a PhD in physics, I mean, it's so much collaboration. There are so many people working together on the same problem. I mean, how can you find a PhD topic for a single person? I'm speaking as a novice here, but isn't that a bit hard?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There is a lot of collaboration, but of course, as you know, like a PhD has to have some like original thought work done by yourself. So either you find a piece in like, so there are some like standard analyses. So for example, when the Higgs was discovered, there's like, there's like a couple of ways you can produce a Higgs boson, and then there are a couple of ways they can decay. Yeah. And we have like X number of analyses you can make to like measure the Higgs. And so you'd have different research groups kind of focusing on like, we can look at when it decays into muons, for example. And then, but then that involves a lot of people. Yeah. But then if you're like, well, I developed this optimization of like how to find this in this region, you can use that as your like original piece. I was fortunate to like kind of find a topic that was like I could publish a paper on my own. Of course, there's no I in CERN. Everyone's collaborating. Yeah. But then there are, of course, there's actual people like doing the analysis, and like everyone is a co-author, but of course not everyone is writing the words. Yeah. And I was focusing on these different searches for supersymmetry, and one of the papers, the ones with the slapstones, I kind of did analysis like myself and published that paper. But of course, I acknowledged the collaboration with like all the other people, that because everyone is kind of doing a piece to like make sure that the data is like all the different particles are like well calibrated, like the things in the detector, and like the reconstruction is like validated, and like everyone is contributing. So you can't say like I did this myself, but the actual final analysis.
But did you actually work? Were you one of the main contributors to the slapstone?
Yes. So for the slapstone, yes.
Cool. I want a slapstone T-shirt.
This is it.
But, no. Yeah, exactly. But
I love it. Or Mrs. Slapstone.
Yeah, that sounds weird.
I know there could be many like bad jokes made with that name, and
it's awesome.
And then you're also like working with like a limited, like you work with the data you have at that point, because you also want to like you don't want to like, sit around and collect data for 3 years and then start analyzing. You want to be the first one to like make an analysis and publish it. And then there's also these like two sibling collaborations, Atlas and CMS, that are like doing the same type of research, but with detectors that are like constructed differently so that they will be like good reference material for each other. And you want to make sure that you're publishing before the other one. So you're like, I published the paper with the slapstones with this particular data. then I finished my PhD 3 years ago. So since then, there's been more data, and someone else has probably like done the new upgraded septum paper.
Awesome,
yeah.
and we're still at your PhD thesis. But for me, I'm an hobbyist when it comes to physics, but I do love the topic and have so many more questions. I would love to go into the theory of everything and what do you think about the future there, etc.
Yeah. I used to like the idea. I want to have a T-shirt where very few people know what it actually means that you have on the T-shirt.
Yeah.
So a slapped-on joke.
Yes.
I want a T-shirt with a slapped-on joke.
All right.
But we should continue and
Sure.
see how you got in contact with Vinnova and what they do, etc. But okay, I have to ask a question. What do you think the solution to the theory of everything is? Is it string theory? Have you heard about Eric Weinstein, by the way, and gauge theory and what he's proposing there? Or do you think string theory is the solution to theory of everything? No?
No.
Is it something have you just left the field of physics
Yeah,
now?
kind of. I checked out.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't go there then. But,
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess no one knows. But how would you describe theory of everything? Is this just combining Einstein with quantum mechanics, or how would you describe, general relativity with
there's
quantum mechanics?
like the one thing that's the unification of forces.
Yeah.
So there's like 4 fundamental forces: gravitational, and there's the strong, and the weak, and the electromagnetic. Oh my God. It's like, wow, this long time ago now. And the point is that they operate at very different scales. And like there are some theories that like they can actually be like at some energy scale they could actually be the same force. So they kind of like align, if you imagine a graph that like the coupling string line. I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay, but before we move on, I can't resist asking one more question, and it's more about quantum mechanics. And for me, I think it's easy to follow the thought that Einstein had, that God doesn't play dice, and that there is a true indeterministic way of nature, or if it's simply a model that is predicting the best we can right now for quantum mechanics. Or is it? Do you think quantum mechanics is how the world works, or do you think it's the best model that we have today?
I think it is the best model we have today.
Yeah.
I think we can get into this topic too, but I mean, I think CERN is really cool and like everything that's done there, but we also must be like a bit humble to like what we can create there. Like obviously we're very good at measuring what we can there, but does that explain everything? I'm not sure. I mean, we can't even like begin to appreciate how, like, if there would be more dimensions, like we're very limited to what we have around us. So, no, I agree. It's a very big question.
And super fun one. I mean,
I know. I agree.
It's a bit shame that you can't take a beer, but otherwise that's an awesome topic, I think, for the after work.
Yeah.
It's more philosophical because no one can really prove anything here.
Yeah. No,
but
exactly.
For me, I have a really hard time accepting that the world is non-deterministic. But okay, let's skip that for now. Should we continue with?
I think we continue now,
because otherwise we stay here forever.
I think we go towards Vinnova now. It's for sure.
Right.
Cool. So how come you made the switch from working with physics and a PhD, and how did you get in contact with Vinnova?
All right. You make it sound like such a small answer. Well, so I did my PhD at CERN. I was associated with ETH in Zurich.
And ETH is one of the most prestigious, I would say, universities as well.
Right? It is.
It's really impressive that you went there.
Yeah, it's almost always like top in continental Europe. So I did my PhD there, as you saw on my thesis. And then I actually went on and did a postdoc at New York University.
Right.
So
still in physics, in
exactly.
to your PhD thesis, or
Different topic. So what I described before with the like data analysis to find the supersymmetric particles, that was like a very like traditional physics analysis and like very advanced, but I never used any machine learning myself then. And I, got into contact with this group at NYU that was kind of we kind of touched upon that subject of like, there's machine learning everywhere at CERN. And I was like, oh, I want to go into that field. And so I kind of joined that group, this professor of physics and data science at NYU, Kyle Cranmer. I joined his group, and then I was just focusing on another like CERN-related topic. Monte Carlo simulations.
That's a bit connection to the machine learning then, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
So we should go there before Vinnova, I guess. Then.
Yeah, exactly. Don't want to miss the...
Not miss the machine learning bits of CERN.
No, but I guess it's a good connection between how you made from more physics into some machine learning.
Exactly.
Even more machine learning. So it's a nice stretch.
That is a like significant stepping stone.
Of course.
I'd say. So I worked as a postdoc for a year and a half, and then for various reasons, including also like COVID, I was meant to move to New York to work there, but then COVID happened, and then I was kind of stuck here, and then I decided it's better to just find a job in Sweden. But
you worked remotely from Sweden then while doing the postdoc?
The first like half a year, I was still at CERN. Okay. And then like winter, like 2019, 2020, I was meant to move, but then
this is COVID.
Then it was
COVID 20, right?
2020, yeah. So then things got delayed for various reasons, and then COVID happened, and then I was stuck in Stockholm. I was like, this is actually kind of nice. I don't want to move anymore. So then I finished. I still worked for a year remotely from Stockholm, and then wrapped up that work in December 2020, and then joined Vinnova in early 2021.
So before moving into Vinnova, then.
So what was the work? What was the work? Monte Carlo something.
Right. So well, it's actually not really about the Monte Carlo bits. We can get into that too, but like we already talked about like the huge amounts of like data that we collect at CERN. But another like essential part, which constitutes a lot of the like takes up a lot of the computing, is the simulation, the simulated data that you like from the theory calculations can like randomly like repeatedly sample and get data that is like fake data, synthetic data. Exactly. Right. You can do that for all these different like theoretical processes that you would see in the detector, and then you kind of have a reference material that you have to have in order to draw any conclusions, because you can't just say like, oh, we produced 4 electrons. Like, okay, was that what we expected? Or was it actually the supersymmetry that ended up there? Right. So you need to have like good control of that, like simulated data to match it with. The problem is that like there's so much, and you have to like go through this like reconstruction chain and like do the detector simulation and process it, and you have many different variations. And you can also like the theory is not perfectly set, so you have some like parameters that you can vary up and down, and then that will create like two more sets of simulated data with like 1 million events, or like we call it like what you collect in a collision for events. So you have just a lot of simulated data.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a lot of terms, that sounds nice, but I guess in some way you're building like a digital twin of the Large Hadron Collider in some sense,
yeah.
Right? That you can experiment with and then potentially do a real experiment later.
Exactly. Yeah. So the topic that I was working on, so instead of doing all these variations, like theoretical like variations up and down and create like many sets of simulated data, it was a multivariate weighting technique. I think we probably need a bit of pen and paper afterwards for the after work. Or we can go through this if you want. Actually, kind of a nice quickly, theory that if you want to. Kind of like the machine learning part is like there's a binary classifier. So if you have two of these like variations, you can train like a classifier to discriminate those two samples. And then like you...
And the samples are long, like time series data?
A sample is like, how would you describe it? It's like, if you set a theory parameter and then simulate the data according to that parameter, you would get like distributions of the various particles that you create, so that their energy and momentum, and then
So
and
distribution of particles, but not split on time in any way.
No.
Okay.
Or like you just be. It's not over time. It's like, well, you collected them a million times.
Yeah.
Just have a million of them.
Yeah.
But then from the output of the binary classifier, you can kind of derive a weight. So instead of like, I mean, this might be getting a bit too difficult to like explain without pen and paper.
Yeah.
Well, in a sense,
in a nutshell, what does it do?
It enabled us to reduce the number of simulated samples by almost, I can't remember exactly, but a factor of 1,000, and still get the same precision. With
down
these,
to 1,000 or?
Yes. I mean, I'm not sure what it is at the moment. It still lives on. But where was I? So the point is that when you train a classifier to take into account many different variables, instead of just weighting in one dimension, you can catch more effects, and then that technique we kind of like.
So let me see if I understand it correctly. So I mean, you do a lot of simulations, but then you need some way to weigh them together based on all the features and the parameters you have to, design or give a prior to the simulation, so to speak. So you came up with a way to reweight, I guess, the simulation. So in that way, you can have a small number of simulations. Is that an accurate way to describe it?
Kind of like you can have a big simulated sample, and then instead of having like 20 different variations of that, you can have a small variational samples, and then reweight according to that other large sample, and then use, instead of just like weight in one dimension, you can use a multivariate technique that is enabled through this classifier. But I mean, it makes more sense on paper. I mean,
I think you also wrote a lot of code with this, and you used PyTorch, I guess, in this case as well, right? And it was using GPUs, I guess, in that time as well, right? And
eventually, when we're testing it on a larger scale.
And does that mean outside of GPUs and in mainframes instead then, or?
No, like first we just we saw if the theory was working, and then we were like, okay, what happens if we would try to simulate a million? And then we were like, oh, we need more computing power, and then we moved to GPU.
TPUs?
No, not GPU. GPU, yeah.
I mean, cool. So you actually wrote like a plugin or some kind of toolbox for PyTorch, basically.
Yes.
In that case. And awesome. I can see how that led into the world of deep learning as well.
Yes, exactly.
All the possibilities there.
I feel like I didn't do that the work justice, but it's on my GitHub. You can go and have a look.
You published it openly as well, so it's there, and I see that it still lives on because I get pull requests. Oh, you do? Oh, that's impressive.
But because I got one 2 weeks ago, so I know people still work on it. Don't know to what extent, but like I said, I kind of my postdoc was meant to be for 3 years, and then for various personal reasons, I finished early, so I kind of just wrapped it up and hope someone can take this.
Handed over what you need to do now as well.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so then the question is, I guess, you handed that over and then you moved into Vinnova. Can you just share the story of how that went about?
Well, I knew I wanted to work with machine learning. I knew I wanted to have a job in Stockholm, and I knew I didn't want to work for Klarna or Spotify or some of the.
Careful,
I know. No, I think coming from the world of like this type of like fundamental research for the greater good, I knew like kind of where machine learning was done in Sweden and what the direction would be, and I think I just didn't want to work for a company. Maybe I'm like burning potential future bridges now.
I was the same. When I was in university, I was like saying or thinking to myself, I will stay in academia forever. I was forced out of academia involuntarily, but then once going there, I got stuck there. and I thought it was really good, but I can certainly understand what you meant with that. So
and I don't think I mean they're doing a lot of cool things, and some things I like agree with and some don't, and I just wanted to make sure like I think I had like the option to like be a bit picky, so I tried to really carefully apply for jobs that I thought I would like, and this job at Vinnova showed up, and I like come into contact with Vinnova through CERN. Like they have they're everywhere. Like I feel like after I talked to people about that I work at Vinnova, someone was like, oh, we submitted this application, or like I worked with this. So they have this this initiative called Big Science Sweden. It's kind of trying to take like the various like technical like inventions that you can get from like big particle accelerators and these collaborations, and kind of see if they can connect it with like companies in Sweden, and also kind of there's also 2 like big accelerators in Sweden being built, like Max 4 and ESS, and like they're involved in this. So I'd like heard about Big Science Sweden, and Vinnova is like the main funder of this. So I'd heard of it through that, but I was thinking.
But did you see some ad for Vinnova, or
exactly? Okay. And then I applied, and I was also kind of like, what would I be doing here? Like, what's your data? Like, I come from a very like data centric place, and like it was a really big step for me. Like, it was going from like having all the computing infrastructure at hand, like at CERN, like and like thousands of collaborators and people who spoke your language, to kind of starting up a data science team from scratch, including like, all right, I want to like install Anaconda on my laptop and it's not working. It's like, oh my God, where am I? Like, what is it, like? There's
a contrast here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a startup inside a big company in some way.
Exactly.
Right?
So you have this, because you have a picture of what data-centric and how it could look like, but then you really need to figure that out in a completely new context.
Exactly. And then, like, it's not particle collision data, it's like documents of Swedish text instead.
So now then the trajectory is NLP.
Exactly. So... yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and I guess we can leave CERN now. And
yes, that's we have spoken, like an hour on CERN here.
Really?
So,
oh my God!
Well, it's amazing anyway.
Okay.
I mean, I'm eager to stay there, but we shouldn't. We need to cover the
we have so many
topics.
good topics also about AI in government, and also beyond Vinnova even.
Yes. I mean, cool. So can you just share a bit about, okay, you got started there, you needed to start a data science team in some way. Can you just share the stories, what did you start working with? Did you have any kind of direction? What was the initial instructions that you got, when you started there?
Well, like I said in the beginning, we kind of, we knew that okay, there's a big push to Vinnova needs to walk the talk. We can't just say oh, everyone needs to do AI and then have very old-fashioned way to deal with documents. So we have to do that. So there's the direction was set, but the path we kind of formed ourselves. So I started at the same time as my other data science colleague Gerons, and we have very different backgrounds, which is very good. Like a good tip for anyone trying to like start a data science team, like have two very complementary backgrounds. So she came more from like consulting and like helping companies become more data driven. And so when she started talking about like, oh, we need to have like data governance, I was like, yeah, right. What? Like, what is that? And you're like at CERN, everything like that is kind of, it's not perfect, but like it's there, like, oh, if I need to look up this, like who's responsible for this like, calibration of this particular thing, where to look, and you have all the information and like directions to the codes and like who to contact, and like there's none of that or some of it, but you don't know what you're missing until you're missing it. It's like not having like road signs. You're like, wait, like these are actually useful for something. So I didn't know, like I was just thinking like, okay, I'll start and I'll like take this prototype and like that I described in the beginning and try to like see if we can like come up with other functionalities and like use with different data. But then we also had to work on not just like the top of the pyramid, but also like the very like low level. Like,
because I was going to ask that. Like, so when you get in here, like, how does your first 90 days look like when you start up a data science team? Like, what are the major blocks of things? Pyramid is a good example here, right? You need to put. What did you mean with that?
I guess it's some sort of like hierarchy of needs for like data science. Like the ML is on top, and then you have more like advanced analytics, and then you have your like the foundation, which is like I'm not sure exactly how it's phrased, but it has to do with like data governance, and like you make sure you know what like the data you have is, and if it's in good quality, and you can't do the top part without like knowing the bottom part.
But did you even have to start like, okay, we have data, but we don't really we have it in different business applications, so we need to start with basically getting the data. The data storage, the data pipelines, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when we started, there's actually, we have a data warehouse where we have information about the projects. So Vinnova handles a lot of.
Perhaps we should start there. What does really Vinnova do? Some people may not know.
And then that will help with the next. So Vinnova is Sweden, the Swedish agency of governmental agency of innovation. So it used to be mainly like a funding agency. Now it's going more into like just being an innovation agency that's like identifying and mobilizing people to like work together, but also funding various projects. So I already mentioned, for example, this like Big Science Sweden, which is like an initiative from Vinnova. It's been funding AI Sweden. So everything from like very large scale, like those big accelerators I was talking about, or the labs in Skåne, Max4 and ESS, like there's funding from Vinnova there too. Main parts, of course, from like other parts like EU and Vetenskapsrådet, but like there's this like huge, like big scale funding, and then small like startup funding too.
And I must say, I mean, it's one of the best places I would argue to apply for funding for, unless you want to do like EU funding style, large kind of applications with huge reporting that you have to do throughout if you do get the funding, long processes for approval and reviewing. But in Vinnova, it's actually rather simple, I would argue, compared at least to other funding agencies. So for me, I think it's surprising how easy and how well, I think, thought through actually the Vinnova funding process is looking. Would you agree? Or
yes, that's very nice to hear too. I mean, I don't have any experience with the EU funding, but
you should be glad that you don't.
So yeah, there and we fund in different programs, like through calls. So there will be some call about like it could be anything from like sustainable mobility to AI to like school meals, and like the main röda tråden, red thread through that is that it should be like towards a sustainable.
And we also had other people from Vinnova here. So we had Daniel Renkrantz, for example, recently as well. And he was, at least before, also working specifically with AI. And I know from the past that Vinnova has made a rather big shift into supporting more AI-driven projects. And I guess, I really recognize what you said there, that, they are really trying to push the industry and governments to become more data and AI driven.
Yeah.
But are they really doing that themselves?
Exactly. Yeah,
right. And is that the reason you would say for starting up this data science team?
Yeah, definitely. So, like you mentioned before, there's this one project that was developed by some consultants that, back to the question about how was the first 90 days. For me, obviously there's a lot to learn, and it's a governmental agency, so there's a lot to also be aware of when you do it, in terms of the constitution and the offentlighetsprincipen and all these things. But I kind of started also early on to we decided to stop the collaboration with the consultants and take whatever they had produced and take it in-house, because now I was there, so I was meant to do that.
And speaking of handover, and a lot of experience from working with consultants, it's usually a very, very hard thing to be handing over a project that consultants has built and then taking that on internally afterwards.
Yeah, and that someone else had initially ordered, beställt, or defined what the project should contain, and not really thought about the handover, and not even it's impossible to know when you start with a pilot project. Will there be someone who to take over it? So there are many challenges, but so I agree. And having come from academia, where it's not good for your reputation if you hand over some shitty code that doesn't work. We don't have to go into details, but I had some difficulties taking over a code, but there's also difficulties in actually, I don't want to say physically, but actually taking that code to our own systems, because I had problems even installing stuff on my laptop when I started. Because of all these restrictions as a government agency. So it was easier said than done to just say oh, here's the code, I'm going to run it. It's no, I have to really set everything up from scratch now in order to even see if this works, and then get back to them and see if it works.
Installing something, this is one of the core problems that we have in DevOps and in MLOps especially, and how to make something that you package to not only work when you build it, but actually work in coming years.
Yeah.
And handling all the dependencies and upgrading the packages and
exactly.
whatnot. It's a super hard problem.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a tangent here, and then there's a massive learning here also, how to work with consultants and how to set up with consultants. If you have an ambition to become data driven as a company, there's a huge difference if embedding consultants to work with you in a way that it's seamless for you to run it, versus you're working on their machines, you're working somewhere else, and you don't really have visibility of the code.
Yeah.
And, you think, oh, it's documented. No, it's not documented. This is PowerPoint. This is not documentation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then, so I think there's a required maturity to buy consulting around software, AI, and machine learning if you truly are planning on becoming data-driven yourself.
Yeah,
versus is a little bit outsourcing more or less the problem, right? I think this is a quite profound, important topic.
I think it has to do with the nature of the applications you want to build. Vinnova is very uses a lot of consultants, for example, for the evaluation of the various programs, and there's a point in that, because then you're unbiased, and there's someone external that is evaluating some of them. It makes sense, and the deliverable is a presentation and a report, and that's fine. And
clean.
Yeah. But an AI application is almost a living and breathing thing. Not really, but like it's something that you like need to be able to maintain and like make sure it doesn't break after 6 months. And I think when you think of consultants' work, maybe at Vinnova they thought like, oh, this we can do this. We get the same thing like just as the evaluation service, but it doesn't work. And you're also like overcoming a lot of like boundaries, or like you let the consultants overcome the boundaries without like actually like when you bring the project in.
They have learned and sold a lot of stuff, but
but it works in their machines.
That knowledge has not really been embedded in the company.
So when I take something over, it's like fine, it works, but then like if I encounter problems that they have solved, like that's a different brain that did that, not me. So a lot of the work was to just make sure that like, okay, we have the solution. We don't want to start like completely from scratch. Like we want to reuse as much as possible, but we had to work on like really the like, okay, we're not gonna read in like Excel files anymore. Like we have to like connect this to our data warehouse and like extract this and like make sure the results end up there too, and not in some like other text format in a file. And the pieces like that, there was a lot of the work.
This is a classical going from a prototype to actually something that works in production, which is so much work, and everyone is underestimating how much work that really is.
And I'm biting my tongue now, because you can talk about this in ERP in different versions where people say, oh, in ERP style they have this word, we go brownfield or greenfield, right? And huge investments, a lot of sunk costs. Oh, no, you need to build on the garbage we have. It's going to be a better idea. And I argue, like sometimes, even if you've done a prototype, you have learned a lot and you should be happy with that, but it doesn't mean you need to use that particular code.
I agree.
Yeah. Because you learned and you have all these fake pipelines. So now we build it a proper foundation. How do we do? I argue you do it cheaper and faster and more robust a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean, for me, since I was also like not just taking on like a new like project, I was also taking on a new field of research, the NLP. So for me, there was a point in like actually not like starting from scratch. So I was happy that there was code available.
Yeah.
But I agree, if this would have been like something that I was more familiar with from particle physics, I would have been like, okay, I'm starting over from scratch and I'm going to do it.
No, and I would argue it's not scratch negative, because you have learned something and you realize what is great, and then you can, 2.0 of the problem, right? But you can write the code cleaner, when you do it clean the whole way. I don't know. I think a lot of times we are creating problems for ourselves.
A simple example of this is that I think, if you do a pre-study of some kind or a prototype, which can be part of a pre-study, it's not for the purpose that this is going to be the product, the application. It's only for the purpose of building the knowledge. Does this work or not? So therefore, you use notebooks and these kind of ugly solutions to quickly not build the proper implementation, but to just obtain the knowledge. Does this work or not? Does the power or the data contain enough predictive power to support the application we want to build? And you shouldn't, I would argue, in many cases, even do that in a production style environment. You should do it in a different environment. Yeah.
And on that subject, I agree a lot with what you're saying. And I think there's this like misconception that like this is how you start. Like this is the way to start. But the problem is so that we can like show the potential and then take it to the stakeholders, say like we saw this potential and now we can move further with these consultants and like but you don't, I mean, the potential is already there. I can tell you that for free. You don't have to have consultants working for it.
But not everyone.
No, of course. I mean, but I can only talk for the like funding agencies and the ones like processing the same types of documents. And I'm like, that you don't have to go through. Everyone don't have to go through the same experience. Like we can definitely reuse it.
But I think there are two schools of thoughts here, and I think they're both valid. Because in one area you really want to do rapid prototyping on something to as a part of an ideation process or validating, do we even have the relevant data? And I fully then agree with what Anders is saying. But then we also have what I'm a strong proponent for, what I would call, we call it the evolutionary MVP. It's actually, we know this is going to work in terms of, it's not a rocket science problem. It's some simple, maybe much more simple advanced analytics even, or something, or reporting, right? So why do we need to prototype and POC then? Because the problem then is a different one. Then you sell in something. The stakeholders saw the Power BI dashboard and they think it's beautiful. So why can't you just run with that? And we all know it's crap underneath, right? So here I want to do an evolutionary MVP. I want to set up a skeleton. I want to highlight how it should work. And I want to have an idea, how do we So I think there are two schools of thought here, and they're both valid for different types of situations.
Yeah. And I think what I was trying to, the example I was trying to highlight is just that you don't have to go and order a pilot project with consultants, because starting that yourself, I think when it comes to rapid prototyping, that's the fun part. That's what I want to do when I start a job. I don't want to take over something but I think there's a misconception that you have to this is the way to start. Okay. And then you have all these different consultant firms saying we can help you with this. We can help you with this. Yeah, get someone started on it.
But it's also very, very different if we talk rapid prototyping, piloting within the internal team versus the new way of selling by consultants.
Handing over is horrible.
I think the point is this, that the consultants have found a way to sort of hide how difficult this is and get their foot in the door with a small little pilot. And then sort of, by the way, this was the pinky, and you need to build the arm.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
But I'm not going to tell you that until we have sort of locked you in.
Yeah, exactly.
I am really cynical here, but I think it's a major difference to talk about rapid prototyping when you have a team and when you are really going in one way versus the sort of the piloting sales approach, which is, of course we should try it, and of course we need to validate it, but it's tricky if you're not super clear on the real massive effort to go to production.
What I'm trying to say is if you want to make a long-term investment in this direction, you have to treat the work as a long-term investment too, and hire someone, and they will know how to start. Yes. It doesn't need to come from it sounds like this is the way to do it. You have a prototype and I inherited. I would have also very much have liked to start from scratch too. So you don't have to go this direction. No. I think.
But the main commitment you said is the commitment in investment, and even if you're piloting or you're doing MVP evolutionary, you need to commit to not only for a pilot. You need to have some sort of commitment in idea on this. So if you're not even willing to commit to recruit one person that can sort of live and breathe it, I don't know.
No, of course. And it's difficult because, you have to start somehow. But I think at least when it comes to government, there is the national AI strategy, and people should be going in this direction. And I'm just trying to say take this direction instead of going through the consultants. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think
I like your opinion here.
Okay, good. Because you're silent. I was it's not.
I'm a consultant, by the way, but I hate consulting.
But they're
I'm
good
also
in
biting my
ways
tongue here.
I'm a consultant, but I truly believe.
I think we shouldn't speak down on consultancy in general, because they can, if you use them correctly, can be a really, really great help for a company.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think so many people don't understand how they can be used in the wrong way, right?
The main point is what should we use consultant for and how and in what way.
Yes.
And, gone, in my opinion, is the hero consulting coming from above, flying in, doesn't work. Gone is the sort of consulting working completely on the side. Well, if you don't want to outsource this know-how, but if you want to be data driven, you need to embed the knowledge. Yeah. So I started a consultancy with the notion, after not being consultant for many, many years, I hate consultants. But I'm gonna start a consulting company because of what we're talking about right now. Yeah. So I think it's the whole industry is biting themselves in the ass, to be honest.
No,
I love consulting, by the way.
Yeah, and I also, just for the record, want to say that like I've had very good interactions with some consultants because there's good and bad ways of working with them.
Yeah,
and
it's more the phenomena.
Yeah,
it's more how we buy consulting, which is sort of, I think, what you are talking about, and I fully agree with it.
Pilot projects.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, we do love consultants.
We love.
Yes,
we love
too.
Yeah. You can't blame them. You can only blame the buyer. The buyer.
The context is weird.
Contractor in that. Cool. Okay, that was a long discussion about consultants. But I'm happy that you moved to Vinnova. I'm happy that Vinnova is taking a more data-driven and AI approach as well. I'm happy that you also are able to continue the project and now getting, I guess, more data and AI-driven way to handle funding applications. And I think since the time has flied away so much, and we actually spoke a bit about your project that you're working with right now, trying to use NLP to understand the summaries of applications, and in that way both categorize, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, both categorize and also classify and sort them in some way, which applications that are good or bad in some way, right?
Yeah, it's not about if they're good or bad. It's just like who should be looking at these.
So only the categorization part.
But then I think leaving that project aside, we can talk about what the other things that I've been doing. So there's so first of all, I mean, as you understood, there's some challenges starting with obviously we didn't have any computing power at hand. So we realized that if we wanted to process and go through PDFs of applications at a large scale, we needed to have a GPU, and that's a kind of a long process also to get to. I mean, we for various reasons can't use cloud, and we also I have access to one of the HPC Vega, one of these computers. But
Vega is in Slovenia, right?
Exactly.
So it's a big EU-funded computing cluster.
Exactly. But the problem is that with Vinnova's data is there's a company secret, so you don't want to just give that to somewhere.
You really want the data in Sweden,
exactly,
more or less, right?
Yeah. So we knew early on that we needed to we were weighing the different options and ended up saying we think we need a GPU server, but having in mind that if we're gonna be the funding agency that's gonna start with data science, I think we could also be sharing these resources. So we also kind of had that in the back of the mind that this is a big investment, but long term I think this is.
So actually, to be able to, as Vinnova, as part of a call, even supply other types of resources, or did you highlight that from being a pure funding agency, now you're an innovation agency, so you have other types of resources?
Yeah, I think what I had in mind is that, so for example, we have this one text analysis tool that there's so many things to talk about, but we want to make sure that not all the other funding agencies go and buy their own GPU and develop their own tool. So we want to make sure that this is what we have. We have the server, you can use it, and this is the tool, and this is what we kind of have in mind. And so we had that in mind from the beginning, saying okay, we know it's not feasible for everyone to buy their own workstation, but we will do it. We will be the exception, and we'll do it, and then we'll make sure that others can use it. But it won't be in a big. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be in a big scale, on a big scale. But yeah, so we decided that last summer. And we ordered this thing, and it arrived 6 months later, which meant that I was basically working without a GPU, for the first whole year.
What type of GPU was it?
Sorry?
What type of GPU?
It's an NVIDIA A100.
Yes,
so it's
A100 GPU, yeah.
Exactly.
That's
yeah. So we were but we want to start working. So we realized we can't be doing any a big scale processing of like the whole PDF documents, but we tried to like find another data set that we had within that we could start like making some useful AI with. And this data set is, so, you know, Vinnova is funding a lot of projects, and Vinnova doesn't decide, or Vinnova, of course, makes the decision who gets funding or not, but we hire external evaluators to do that for us. And then they say
part
like,
of doing that as well.
All right. Yeah, of course. Sure. And then, then they make a recommendation and say like, oh, this should get funding or not. So we have like a big pool of evaluators, you included. And when we collect these evaluators, you've done it yourself, you kind of give your own like, oh, I'm an expert in this field and this field and this field. But there's no like standardized way of like saying AI. You can say that in so many different ways. Or if it has to do with like mobility or circular economy, like there's many different variations and languages, and like you can see anything like showing up as like this is the expertise. So we thought that, okay, this is kind of a fairly small data set, but we could still do topic modeling. So kind of cluster these different keywords and get common topics. So instead of having like 2,000 different words, and then when the program manager is like, oh, I need to find all the like evaluators that are working in circular economy, they don't have to go and fill like, okay, I have to search for circular economy, and then circular
economy.
All the different variations you can think of, because there are common themes. There are not that many different topics. Like there are.
So let me see if I understand this correctly, because it sounds really cool. Let's say a new call comes up, and you need to find a set of reviewers, evaluators for that call. And usually you had similar calls in the past, and they had a set of reviewers, but not exactly the same, perhaps. So then coming up with a set of reviewers that are mostly related to this call, and then you used machine learning to do that, some kind of topic modeling technique. Yeah, so the topic modeling is kind of to just get an efficient way to filter on the various evaluators within different topics. Yes. So instead of like, they go to this like dashboard with all the different words, and then you're not sure if you're like picking everyone who knows AI because you just search for AI, but a lot of people put in ML instead. ML, yeah. But the topic modeling will catch that and make one topic of that. So can you share any details? What type? There are so many different topic modeling techniques out there. LDA. Yeah. Perfect.
So that was like a nice, convenient data set to start with, and also like a kind of it won't change anyone's life, but it would make some part of their work a bit easier. So this is kind of an example of something that because we heard early on, we're like, we don't want to just be like prototyping. We have to like take something and like put it into production.
I love it. I mean, like, so go narrow, go sharp, and go commit to deploy.
Yeah. So that's
awesome, Henrik.
So we
commit to deploy, just to share, it's one of our
favorite t-shirt quotes.
Yeah, one of the terms that we try to use quite a lot.
I agree.
I mean, it's really saying what you're saying. I mean, instead of just building a lot of prototypes, we should really try to find some way to deploy it, to actually try it out in the real world, so to speak, and deploy it. Right?
So instead of talking about commit to deploy as the last, instruction, that's your mantra for your initiatives. So even if you do rapid prototyping or you do MVP or whatever, we are committed to deploying. That's the number one goal. Yeah. And then you don't go too ambitious. Go for what is clear and what you understand, and commit to deploy.
Yeah.
I think that's an awesome. I think it's Luca who sort of.
Was it him?
Luca at Paltarion. We were joking about this.
Yeah. I mean, cool. So one project then, topic modeling, trying to help Vinnova to find the right reviewers for a new call comes up. Yeah. Sounds like a perfect.
And then you can do so many things like with the data we have. I mean, just the next possible thing would be to like, once you have these like topics, you would just like easily, you have a call for AI and you have all these like, you've isolated all the like AI evaluators, and then you can like optimize who gets what, and like you need to have like a nice representation of the evaluators from not just industry, but also public sector and academia. And there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. But this is kind of the first stepping stone, just like, all right, how can we just group them together so we know who's who? And then there's so many things we can do.
Awesome.
But, yeah.
How does your opportunity portfolio work and look like? How do you identify ideas, and how are you sorting them, and how are you prioritizing, and how do you build your pipeline roadmap or whatever you want to call it?
Right. So a lot of this work is I want to give credit to my colleague Garance, because I think she early on had a good vision of like, this is how we should do it. Last spring, we started in like February and March. Last spring, we not only just like took over that prototype and like set up our own like data science environment to work in, like we also like went around and talked to people and was like, what are the pain points? Like what would you like to see? And there's like Vinnova is a really inspiring place to work at. There's so many knowledgeable people and experts, and like if you ask for suggestions, you'll get them. You get so many. So then we kind of had to like back up and be like, hey, perfect, thank you. We got all these suggestions, and then we saw this like prioritization thing from AI Sweden that was like help to prioritize, like taking into account
like a simple,
feasibility,
like a template to help you sort out feasibility,
exactly, and you
value,
can like
effort,
rate the different things. And then we had like a nice kind of quadrant thing where we'd have like, if it, like we would judge like if it's feasible, like some things we obviously needed like our GPU for, and some things we could do right away. Some things, like a lot of things aren't AI. A lot of things are just like connect these to different data sources and like present the results.
Still
like
value.
I know a lot. So there's like, we try to identify the like low hanging fruit, and like whatever is in the like upper right quadrant in like it'd have high value and also high feasibility we would do. And then around like last fall, we kind of took all that material back and was like, okay, we know kind of where to start. And I focused on the AI stuff, and with this like commit to production mindset, of course, I'm sure that my like collaborator or people at Vinnova is probably wondering like, where are all the AI applications? Because they don't see the work that goes into production. Like the deployment is really an annoying process, especially if you're setting it up for the first time and like having to set up like agent pools on like a GPU server. Then I had very nice help of a consultant to help me with
helping
me with that. Exactly.
Not doing it for you.
Exactly.
Helping you.
And I was like, you need to help me set this up. And it was perfect collaboration. But yeah, so that takes time. If you're doing it for the first time, we hope that the next idea we have will then be like fairly easy to deploy, because we will have like one like pipeline to fall back on.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, the time is flying away now, so
really?
keep it short.
Yeah. Also, the notion of going to production and adoption. What are we talking about here? Are we talking in something ends up in a dashboard? Are we talking about really trying to go back into the core work process of people? How do you see that, or what have you been doing? This is kind of
just presenting results in a dashboard. So like taking like all the information you need from the data warehouse, do the topic modeling, have the results, and then like dump the results back into the data warehouse and visualize it in. We use ClickSense. Mm-hmm. So this is like one app where people go to when they find evaluators, and then this augmented data, which is the topic modeling, the various topics, is there as a filtering option. So that's how. But making sure that like, I mean, I'm going to go on maternity leave, so I'm not going to be able to like, a new evaluator is added to the mix. Like, where do they end up? So, yeah, that's why it's in production, so I don't have to think about that.
I mean, also you use ClickSense, I guess, both as a dashboard and an interaction tool or a web interface you can have, but also as a database in that case. Or do you have an additional data stores that you can use for this, or do you store it directly in ClickSense?
No, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I thought that ClickSense, it brings it out from the data warehouse.
It depends on what it can, of course, but it can also store stuff by itself.
Query files.
I guess you have another data warehouse now. Yeah. Can you share anything about that if people were interested in knowing what type of?
No, I mean, for this you'd have to ask or invite my my colleague Arons.
I mean, awesome, and it is so fun to hear about all the different applications you can use data and AI for in Vinnova. You mentioned in the beginning, being able to categorize calls or applications. Sorry, now you use topic modeling as well for understanding who to bring on as a reviewer. What are there any other plans and any other applications already, or some plans? What are the next steps? What are the things you potentially are considering in the future that you could use AI for potentially?
Well, another thing, we have many ideas. One pain point for any government agency is utlämningsärenden. So that's when, as a government agency, according to the Press Act, tryckfrihetslagen, no, that's not the one. Offentlighetsprincipen, you have to, all documents that are processed by a government agency, the public has access to it. So you can be like, I want to find this application, or anyone from the street can come in and ask for any type of document. The problem is that if that contains business secrets or GDPR information, that has to be blackened out, and this is done manually, not in a very systematic way. It really depends on who's doing it. So that would be, or in my opinion, a very
for
cool
Vinnova
application
themselves, or in
for
general?
us. To start with, because of course you would be svärta. You would be doing black out the different things probably if you're another government agency. But I think that would make a good training set to have what has been blacked out before, and then just dump that somewhere and say that's the secrets, and then tag that in the text. So that's something that we thought about.
I think a lot of agencies would love to have
I know exactly.
Because that's a fairly universal problem that you are onto, that you could model something and build a data set around and do something that you are using could really spread within the government.
Yeah, exactly.
Super cool.
I wish I wasn't going on maternity leave. We have many ideas, and there's another thing where you use take project somewhat at the summaries and embed and get the vector representation, and then take the cosine similarity between all the different summaries, and kind of get a score of how similar they are to each other. And then see if some very similar summary has showed up in a call that's going on at the same time, because that happens. People are there's 4 calls that we can apply to, and you want to have some sort of transparency, make sure that not 4 people in Vinnova is going to approve 4 different projects. That happens. It's not ideal, because then you have to we have to take the money back, and there's a lot of headache around that. So you want to have some transparency, and it's okay if, we can't stop people from submitting applications, but sometimes they can be we want to see if people have just submitted the same, or very similar, even copying something, or if something has already received funding, you would get this cosine similarity score of saying oh, this is something similar, or see oh, you're actually working on the same thing, you should be collaborating. So that's another thing that I think I would like to have do by the time.
And also, I can see that there could be so many applications for using data and AI-driven approaches in Vinnova. I was thinking more like, you have to come up with new calls all the time as well.
Yeah.
And I at least to my knowledge, sometimes you have recurring calls comes up all the time.
Yep.
But to have some more ideas about, right now, I think the call about this should be prioritized in some way, or perhaps a completely new type of call.
Yeah.
Given that you, for example, see a lot of project summaries that you say come in, and they are very similar, but saying that they are not really that similar to the actual call.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should have a separate call about that.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Or just like if there's another trend that we haven't picked up.
Right.
That
identify trends in some way.
So, and I think, AI can be used for that, but it's also, I think, about just enabling our the program managers to give them tools to be able to to catch these trends in a good way. So there are
No, but I get this sort of my neurons start linking to mother brain thinking and AQT. Like a VC company, is trying to build ideas in order to pick VCs. And then we are arguing: are you picking VCs or are you picking trends?
Right.
And if you just tweak that idea just a little bit, and then say, well, we're not going to use it for the VC purpose, but we're going to use it for a call purpose. It doesn't need to be that far away.
Yeah.
Also, I think, we had this other person on the show that was working with Mother Brain. So Mother Brain is a company that tries to help VCs to decide what to invest in.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's very similar to what you do, right? But they look more to a number of different things, including, what teams I believe they have, the people, and I'm not really sure all the.
There are several parts. There are several parts. One thing is where are we sort of looking for VC, and then when they are zooming in, okay, what are the what constitutes an investable startup? The teaming aspect, the idea. So there are many different aspects in order to sort of filter out high potential, so to speak.
Yeah, and we also had Henrik Landgren from Arc Capital, and they also are a VC. He actually came from EQT and worked with Mother Brains himself quite a lot, and then he started a new VC, which is trying to have a completely data-driven approach, or very close to complete data-driven approach. So simply saying, instead of you pitching the idea of why you should invest in me, simply show us the data, and it should demonstrate why. That is really cool idea. It's really turning the whole process over to the other side. And, that is sometimes what data can do. It can really, instead of just, making an existing process more efficient, could really turn the whole process upside down and say, now you don't need to pitch anything. Don't do a presentation. Yeah. Just show us the data, and then we'll make a decision.
Yeah, or we already know what to fund.
Exactly.
You don't even have to show us. We know your data.
Yeah. Awesome. I think there is a lot of, that could be something for you to look more into as well.
And this is one of the things we've picked up from Vinnova. Like this is, if enable this type of more advanced analysis and picking up trends is something. I personally don't think it's 100% AI. I think it's more about just connecting various data sources. So
more statistics, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. And Gerhans is focusing on that. I focus on the AI stuff.
Yeah.
But that's something that's really relevant.
Yeah,
of course.
But also here, we should use AI when it's applicable, but a great idea. This is data driven, right? So we understand data in deeper ways, and then the right, what do you call it? Occam's razor, right? You choose the
simplest tool for the job.
For the job, sort of thing. Yeah. But I really want to have some time to talk a little bit about your learnings as a governmental agency to do AI, and if we can sort of distill out ideas, do's and don'ts, tips and tricks, or how to think for other agencies.
Yeah.
Could we, I'm not, maybe
Sounds
we
great.
should,
yeah.
Could we go there now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, we were pretty lost when we started. What we did was we took advantage of many networks through AI Sweden, and there's many networks out there for government agencies of various sizes to like collaborate, and we kind of signed up for all of them and sat in the meetings, but mainly used it to just like get someone. If we saw someone who's like having a similar journey, already traveled, we would like email them and be like, hey, can we pick your brain for an hour and talk to them?
Perfect.
And we had really good conversation with I think he's a product owner at Skatteverket, Andreas Voxberg, and he was the one who was like, he said this was like our first month or something, he's like, we always thought about production first. And I was like, okay, production first, perfect. And then we took that advice, and we've been trying to, of course, it's like we're not perfect either. Like we were not always succeeded, but yeah, just ask other people how they did it. And especially when it comes to like computing, like how have others done it? Like a lot of people have, like in the bigger government agencies that are more data driven, like Arbetsförmedlingen, Skatteverket, SEB, they have their in-house infrastructure. And then we talk to, on the other side of the spectrum, some of the smaller ones, and they didn't have anything. So we were like, okay, we're kind of in between here. We want to like learn from the ones that are better. And we made decisions based on what others had learned. So you're asking me the same thing, like and I'm saying like
that's
reach out to us.
I mean, it's a scientific approach. You do your background research. You look up to what other people have done. You try to learn the best from them, the best practices, and then you try to apply it. And right?
And it is also a peer approach. It's like it's seeking out your peers. There are two things. The seeking out your peers is doing the research, but I argue you're also collecting your own point of view.
Yeah.
So, and I think, I mean, like, once again, use consultants is great, but ultimately you should build your own point of view, why this will work or stuff like that. So this very pragmatic way that you're describing, I think is quite powerful, and you can, it's scientific research. It's fairly straightforward. Yet, is it done that way all the time? I'm not so sure.
No, but what I think, connected to this, I mean, it's for one, know how to do it, as you mentioned. You can speak to other people, learn what you can from them, but then you come to a point, okay, now it's time to start doing it. And then you mentioned you need to get the GPU, for example. Yeah. You need to have the computational power and building the hardware and the infrastructure and everything to actually make it work for you as well. And I think, as we said in the beginning, this is a journey that I think every agency or other company is also trying to do, but not really sharing how to do it in a good way. So everyone is doing the same work over and over again. And
we're building a lot of cow paths instead of one highway for this.
Do you have any thoughts about that? How to?
No, I agree. And I think I just also want to say that, like, I understand that, like, coming from Vinnova, we also have, it's easier kind of for us to also be like, ask anyone for a meeting. Rather, I mean, this advice maybe doesn't apply if you're a small company trying to do the same thing. Like, Vinnova is very respected, so and everyone's like, oh, we need to like make sure we don't, we have a good relationship. So it was easy for us to also like, first of all, be placed inside of all these networks from the start. So we didn't even have to like look them up. We were already there, and then.
But I think one advice on that is that AI Sweden is trying to do the same, and they're trying to share that. I'm not sure if they still, at least when I was there, that they call it the use case factory or something that you can collect experiences from all the partners they have and then share that. So then you can find a place, even if you're a small startup.
That's a very good point.
And how did you go about sort of the research part, and you sort of and then going from thinking to doing? Did you have to go and get some funding, or did you have to present a business case, or did you make a plan, or how did it work more in practice when you needed to now investment starts here, work starts?
Right. And that's also maybe a good thing about being at a government agency. We kind of already had the commitment from above, from like our Director General, like Generaldirektör Darja. This was a very high priority, so we kind of have
General Director was yes,
yeah. So we didn't have to like go convince anyone.
But then you need to present what are we planning to do and how we're planning to do it and how much will that cost still.
Yeah, exactly. So that's we started off with this again was mainly Gerance's work, where she like made just evaluation of where we are right now, and then see like where do we want to be, and then like the path to get there, and awesome. Present this. And this was done. I learned a lot from her, seeing her work.
I think what you're saying, if we just think a general topic of like how to make government agencies like Vinnova and perhaps similar organizations as well be more data and AI driven, then I think what you said is you have the privilege of having support from the top management team.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think if you don't do that, if you don't have support from that team to make a significant investment in time and money, it will be really hard, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So that could be an advice for other agencies and organizations.
Start with securing the real commitment. Yeah. I mean, like, so you are coming in now, you're even recruited, right? So so something has been going on here with that commitment, and it's quite obvious, right? For Vinnova, it's quite obvious. We need to walk the talk. It's a very simple rhetoric. But if you're in another agency, well, you need to secure the context first. You need to secure the fertile ground, so to speak.
And I think
if you don't even, otherwise you have nothing, right?
Yeah, but I think then the advice on like networking and collaborating also applies, because you can just like use us as an example and say like, look, they did all this. We can do it too if it's a similar government agency, and then try to get your
so the first step of going out there and getting your research down applies in both cases. Yeah. Either is to present your plan, or it's to present why we need to do it. Yeah. I mean, like it's a little bit like the research you need to do, and then it's a little bit like what's the maturity on your stakeholders, and then choose that. Okay, cool. I like that.
Let's. We have, it's not so much time left, but the problem of building the infrastructure, I think everyone is doing it. No one is sharing. Do you have any? And then the general topic is for normal companies that are not agencies, they can use the public clouds that we have, and that's a big advantage, of course, for them. But we don't have. I'm trying to move to more societal, long-term topics here. So
fine with me.
And if we do that, I guess one question basically is, given that we don't have a big cloud provider in Europe at all, not anywhere near the big cloud providers in US and China, and we don't have one in Sweden, and everyone has to build it all the time for themselves. But do you think that's a big problem? Secondly, how can we start to fix that? Is that something that Vinnova could start to help with, perhaps? Or how do we solve the problem that everyone is building data and AI infrastructure by themselves all the time?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's that's a problem. It's just and I think Vinnova definitely could have a part to play in this. I'm not sure if, me personally, I'm not sure if like a European cloud solution would be maybe the best. I think there are resources out there, like I mentioned before, the HPC, via
it's still EU funded HPC clusters, and mainly in most of them I would. Yeah. Or which one do you think about something else? Or?
No, there are other examples too, right? But I mean, I think there is a reason. Like you can't say there aren't any resources. There are.
Yeah, but not to the scale anywhere near to the big cloud providers.
Of course, yes. and of course it's another business model of just like pay per minute or usage. And no, I mean, but I also don't see it happening from the Vinnova perspective, I don't have a good answer for this actually. I mean,
nor do I, by the way. I have no good answer for that. I don't think anyone really does.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Like, I think that the EU should be working on this. I mean,
there are these big initiatives in Europe, like Gaia-X is one of them.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build up some kind of European infrastructure. I think it's very dangerous if there is more politician or EU Commission-led kind of initiatives. I was simply hoping that there will come a private company that is doing something similar to the big private, organizations that are building the cloud solutions in US and China were to happen in Europe or Sweden.
Yeah.
That would be an awesome thing, I believe. But how to fix that, I have no idea.
No, me neither.
We should probably leave it at that, but just to recognize it's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
That we have. And it's causing all the government agencies because they get stuck, I would say.
I know, yeah.
They can build a small prototype on the laptop or perhaps an A100 GPU that they can buy potentially, but to really have a way to efficiently and in a flexible way try out, experiment, and really deploy applications, it's a completely different thing.
Couldn't you argue that at least for the public sector, that you should why don't you use fund and infrastructure for Sweden? Why don't we simply, like we said, we need to fund fiber to the rest of to all of Sweden, and we put billions on fiber. Well, you just go a little bit higher up in the stack than fiber with the same reasoning, and maybe for the public sector. Why couldn't that work? Why why can't we just have a Berzelius 2? Right, and then
I'm biting my tongue.
Yeah, I know. Maybe that's the stupidest ever, but
I think it's super dangerous if we have government-led cloud solutions.
Why? For the public sector, why?
It will be horribly poorly driven. It will not be as efficient. It will not be anywhere.
Okay, so the problem is that even if you have the money, they wouldn't know what to do with the money in any effective way.
It's just to see how some of the HPC solutions, at least that are there, are being handled. Or I shouldn't name names, but
so basically, what you are saying, you need another type of organization, in order to make this fly.
To make it sound very clear. I think we should have a company that commits to deploy a cloud solution that works with a working sustainable business model as well. Yeah. If you don't have that and you just pour taxpayers' money into something without them having really thought through how to do that in a scalable way,
so this needs to be a scale up of some kind. But why couldn't we have a massive call to support one of those scale-ups?
I think that's now you're talking.
This is actually where I was going with it.
Right, yeah.
So, but I was asking you to kill that idea. So we need money from the government, but we don't want you to spend it on to build it in your own bureaucratic organization. But put that big money, sack of money, in a big call. And then
but Vinnova,
why not?
Yeah, I know.
Why not?
Create a big call for it.
Yeah,
massive call. Massive call for this.
Yeah,
that's my call.
That's mine as well.
Okay.
Now we have a solution.
Okay, I'll take that back to Vinnova. I'm sure it's fun. No, I agree. It's a good suggestion.
No, but because the topic is it needs funding and it needs support, and I don't think it should be VC funded because the people who are...
It could be, though.
It could be partly there, but I think also the point with this...
I think you need some starting help.
You need starting help for sure. Yeah. I mean, if you want to build infrastructure, it's a lot of money, right? So the runway is quite...
And the problem is usually if someone do succeed to do it, like DeepMind or something, then the big tech giants will buy it and they will do a brain drain and it won't really support Europe or Sweden anymore. And that is a big problem. We're getting stuck in this.
We're stuck.
Yes. I think we should try to close off with some more long-term societal topics here, potentially. And for one, if we just speak about government agencies still to some extent, do you see some trend? In Vinnova, we can see they are starting to work on this, put some significant investments and time and money into it. What do you think in general about Swedish agencies? Are they improving and understanding the problem, so they're starting to really invest in this, or is it a positive trend in short, you would say?
I say yes.
You mentioned, for example, you mentioned Skatteverket and Arbetsförmedlingen. I think they are two awesome examples of someone that is really taking this to heart.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone is interested. I think the problem is how you do it, rather than if they're inspired or not. And what was the question?
Do you believe it's a positive future of governmental agencies to be more data and AI driven?
Yes, I think so. I think there's, from what I've seen, huge potential.
People they need to understand the problem. They need to have, what we spoke about before, the support from the management that you have in Vinnova. But if people are starting to understand that, and I think, what you did in Vinnova to support AI Sweden, for example, I think this is really educating companies in why they need to do it and what they need to do in some way, right? And
recognize that we have the same challenges and restrictions and potential, like the thing I mentioned about the sekretessgranskning, the blackout of the documents, a very common thing that exists in all the government agencies. Like, this is something that we could, that everyone could benefit from. So,
really, I mean, if we start to simply, I think actually Donny Gillblad, we had also on the show, and he's the co-director of AI Sweden, and we had him, and I asked him, I thought, a really, really difficult question on why do we need AI Sweden? And I thought he would be long-winded, kind of, long answer, blah, blah, blah. He said it extremely concisely.
Really? What did he say?
Can I answer?
Yes.
No one can do it alone.
We're too small to do it by ourselves or something. Yeah.
And this applies on one agency versus another agency. It fundamentally applies
to Sweden as well.
To Sweden, and I would argue, because the idiotic thing is not only that we are building our own infrastructure ourselves, we're all sitting and inventing our own data science lifecycle process ourselves. So I mean, so there are methodologies out there, but we're all bits and pieces here and there, and you're kind of, when you get to the how question, this is all about the how question. It's not only it's the infrastructure how, it's the practices how, is the organizational how, is the governance how, is the investment and funding how. So it's a multiple of hows that we are trying to do alone.
Yeah. Well, I have an example for you then, to kind of showcase that it is possible over the government agency
collaboration.
So for example, this the prototype I was talking about before, another government agency got interested and was like, oh, we want to do the same thing as Vinnova, and they kind of used the same set of people to further develop this prototype, and we got in contact. So this was the agency of growth analysis, Tillväxtanalys.
Tillväxtverket, right?
Tillväxtanalys. So there's two different ones. So one is just for growth and one is to analyze.
Okay.
So that is more, it's not a funding agency, it's actually analyzing what we as funding agencies are doing and kind of preparing calls or comparing calls. So they further developed this other tool that had a topic modeling functionality, and we got into contact, and that was someone who is an analyst. He's not a data scientist, but he collaborated with the consultants and got this tool, and the money ran out, and he's like, okay, I have this tool, but I can't run it. And I was like, perfect, let me in. I'll help you set it up. If you then if we need to change something, I can help out with this, and then and you then give us we co-develop it, and now this is what we have named the tool Mimer,
Mimer.
Yeah, that was Henrik's idea on growth analysis.
Mimer is an old system as well. Do you know? It's an old database system as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
but this is also like a mythological
creature.
name.
Interesting.
Something from like drinking from the source of knowledge. This just like working with the fact that he had something I needed and I had something he needed, and we kind of just like combined. And now, at least we'll see if I manage before the baby, but I want to just put this tool up on GitHub and like make sure that like if someone else can use it.
But I think this is really interesting because the grassroots, ourselves, individuals, people, we can make this happen.
Yeah.
And we are making it happen. And grassroots, we ourselves who knows this, we actually understand the practice is quite not so strange. We're going to do something, we're going to put it on GitHub or GitLab, and we're going to use it together. This the stakeholders who are supposed to organize this or federate this, this is sort of this is this is peer-to-peer, self-sufficient, self-organized, right?
Yeah.
And not sure that will scale enough. So what I'm trying to say is that the ingredients, how to do it, what we should do, is already proven over and over again of all these individual with passion who's doing the collaboration, and they have solved how to do it. We use GitLab for blah, blah, blah. Why don't we start thinking about packaging this, and why don't that's the scaling we need. I mean, like maybe this is more important than much other things. Sorry, I'm getting passionate about this because I think it proves what you are doing is working, and I think it also proves what we as stakeholders should be working on in order to support collaboration at scale.
I agree, because like this is the type of like collaboration that I know that our lecturer has been like, this is what we want to have, and then like a couple of months down the line, like after we like started this collaboration, I was like, oh, Daria, by the way, we have this collaboration with tillväxtanalyst, and like, that's perfect. This is exactly how we want to be working. But it didn't come from just like, we need a collaboration and we'll like start and like reach out. It has to come from like the fact that like I needed something from him, and and we knew that we could share resources and. But no, I agree. It's
the point. It's in the end, it's only human capital that makes it possible right now. Yeah. So how can we take whatever is human capital to be great? How can we sort of facilitate that? Yeah. How can we have structures that facilitates that this is easier to find? Exactly,
because you can't also just like tell people to collaborate, because if they don't have an incentive to do it, you're just going to be forcing people to sit in meetings and then have no result coming out of it. So I don't know. I just showed that there's potential.
There is potential.
Yeah, I don't know.
There is a future. And it could be positive if we have some ambassadors, evangelists, people that are passionate, I guess, about if we work together. We're too small to do it by ourselves, but if we find people to work with, then it could be a beautiful future, right? Awesome. With that, let's move into the final questions. And Leonora, I think I know the answer to this question, but what's next in your life? Privately, professionally?
Well, deploy this thing.
Deploy, I like that.
But okay, deploy, but then you still mean professionally and not privately.
Right, yeah.
I was taking the joke approach.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's about it. I'm planning on going on vacation in 2 months from now, and then go.
But you meant to deploy professionally as well with.
No, I meant to deploy this.
Mimer.
No, the topic modeling of the reviewers, that thing, and then also just kind of, I think it'd be a nice thing to just wrap up this. Because right now it's not public, and there's also like we can't just go say like here's Vinnova's code and put it on GitHub. We have to be a bit careful about what we, how we do it. But I think that would be a good thing in a sort of broader sense of handover. So if someone
so a role model in the sense that we want to share and help other agencies as well, and you want to be able to do a handover not only internally but also externally. And if you could do that, publicly, I think that would be an awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
model approach.
We'll see, and I want to make sure I do it so I don't get emails asking this code doesn't work. So
you just have to commit to deploy even when you are on maternity leave, right?
So that's
but then you also have some other things happening in 2 months as well.
Exactly.
You will have to commit to deploy as well.
Exactly. And then I'll be working on different type of intelligence.
It's natural intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. And training, a natural
let's
brain.
talk about the difference between natural and artificial intelligence and how to train it.
Exactly.
You're still working with intelligence. It's just natural instead of artificial. Right?
Yeah.
It's important stuff.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can get inspired for how to do it artificially as well later on.
Or apply some of the things I know from work on
I have a training data set for the kid.
Data-driven maternity leave. I like it.
Oh, that's a new
We
blog.
have to hear how
that would be great. There's all these different. You can blog on anything. What if someone would mix machine learning and maternity leave? What would that be all about?
Yeah.
That was just a stupid.
I guess there's a lot of scary, questions of people not knowing how to do things. And if you can perhaps use data and AI somehow, I think it would be very appreciated.
Maybe we can have a sorting algorithm.
Topic modeling on food to
topic modeling on baby stuff, on baby topics.
Right.
Leonora, anyone that you would recommend to have on this podcast, someone that you would like us to invite and you to listen to?
Well, I thought a bit about this, and I've come into contact with a professor of applied mathematics. He doesn't know I'm saying this now, but in Uppsala University, David Sumter. He's a Englishman working in.
What was his name?
David Sumter.
I didn't recognize him.
He's
Sumter.
He's been doing obviously research in applied mathematics, but also a lot of data science for football.
Oh.
My partner is also Englishman, so there's a lot of football at home. So we have a book of his, and he's also the PhD advisor of my sister-in-law. So I know him from then. So I think he's doing some cool stuff, so that'd be fun.
We had the person, doing data-driven soccer analysis.
Okay.
You need to watch it. We had one of the senior data scientists at Arsenal Football Club here.
Yes.
Yeah, but he was working on data. You need to listen to this.
Yeah.
What's his name? Kontek? No,
Mikael Zilkin.
Mikael.
All right.
Mikael.
Yeah. No, and he's working on data science for the sports physio for the players. Oh. So he's actually not very, very cool. So the data around how we maximize the performance of the players in Arsenal.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's something for your for your husband.
Yeah.
He's an Arsenal fan or not?
Not.
Okay, then it's out.
You need to bring it to other clubs.
Yeah, you can steal. If they can steal it.
Leonora, it's been a true pleasure to have you here. We had so many other topics that I was hoping or planning to speak about, but I think the topics we were managing to cover, even though I would have to cover so many more physics topics as well when we have an expert.
We had an hour of physics, so I think.
Yes, but I still had so much more.
Worse than my PhD defense.
That's good. I take that as a compliment.
Anyway, it's been a true pleasure. Wish you the best of luck in your future with the maternity leave and everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you.